त्याच्यावर काय
हे फ्री देतो पुस्तक.
हळद
ही हळद पावडर.
छान आहे ना हे. मम्मीला दिली तर तुम्ही वाचत बसते.
नाही, गिफ्ट करायला खूप छान
आहे. टेस्ट करून घ्या. आमच्याकडे हे लिहिलं कोणी?
हे मीच लिहिलं.
तुम्हीच लिहिलंय. तेच मी हा चेहरा
माझंच पुस्तक आहे आणि आई आहे माझी. आईच्या सगळ्या रेसिपी मी डायरी मध्ये लिहून ठेवल्या.
अच्छा.
ती आता एक्सपायर झाली तर तिला ट्रिब्यूट म्हणून मी हे पुस्तक लिहिलं.
आणि मुलगी तुमची की काय?
Hello, good morning.
Maitra sir, you're there in the call?
Yes, ma'am, I'm there.
Okay, okay. Padma ma'am, Dr. Padma, you are starting the session. Your voice is not clear. Dr. Padma?
Madam, she's trying to join. She has not joined yet, actually.
No,
the-
Yes,
the-
because sir, see, Raveen sir is waiting for us to start the session.
yes, yes. No, no.
Hello, ma'am, I'm audible now?
Maitra sir, can you hear Dr. Padma?
Yeah, ma'am. Right now I'm audible, ma'am. My voice is
Yes,
audible.
yes,
to-
yes.
Okay, okay,
Yes.
ma'am. Sorry for delay, everyone. I welcome you all for the pre-conference session of Icaim 2023 on behalf of Thakur Institute of Management Studies, Career Development and Research. Today, our guest speaker is Mr. Ravin Kumar, and sir has over 15 years of experience, and he has possesses a varied experience in sales, customer relationship, strategy, and product management. Now now I am going to play the introductory video about Mr. Ravin Kumar, sir. पॉज करो, पॉज शेयर साउंड वापस उसको स्टॉप करो. Sorry for the delay, sir. I request Vinita ma'am to say a few words.
Yeah. Good morning, Ravin Kumar. We are so thankful to you for being a part of our event. So Icaim is basically an annual event happening in our institution, and we focus mostly as an institution on the domains of agriculture and healthcare. So this year too, we are having many sessions coming up on 11th, which is the main day of the conference, focusing specifically on the farmers and the agriculture sector. And on the 12th, that is Sunday, we will be having several expert discussions happening and focusing on the healthcare. So you being a part of TCS, and we have come to know, sir, that you have done a lot of good work and in-depth work in the field of agriculture. We are looking forward to your session to understand how IT is being leveraged in the area of agriculture, sir, specifically focusing on the aspect of global warming. Thank you, sir. Handing over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, and thanks for the opportunity, ma'am. Yeah, could I get the permission to share my screen?
Yes, sir. Sir, it is there. Have the permission, please.
I don't think I have permission. Oh yeah, I got it. Just let me know when you see my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, excellent. So we'll get started. Again, very good morning, everyone. My name is Ravin. So I head the strategy and business development for digital food initiatives. So we are part of the research and innovation arm of TCS. And our focus is to see how we can leverage combination of sky datasets and earth datasets to improve the whole sustainability of food production. And some of it we will cover it today about what we are doing and how we think the industry is moving towards and where we can add value from a technology perspective. Happy to share. And if you have any follow-up questions, if you wanted to discuss it further, I'm happy to give my time to discuss this and see what we can collaboratively work on this. So before we get into the topic, I think to take a step back and look at what's happening across the agriculture sector, we see few trends which are common across multiple geographies. For example, climate change is becoming a reality in terms of impacting the food security and stability. So we can see that due to unseasonal rainfalls or a shortage of rainfalls, the crop production is getting impacted. Last year, in a couple of last seasons in Brazil, we were working with one of the large cooperatives, and we saw that there was a sudden frost which was not expected, which didn't happen for the last 25 years. So the crop yield dropped about 40%. So those things we are unable to predict. I mean, and we are unable to look at how do we handle such disruptions to value chains and the impact on the overall food security. Water scarcity has become a reality now because we work with a lot of governments in the Middle East and with the availability of groundwater. The agriculture is very constrained. So in terms of how we can help farmers in terms of using the water more appropriately and looking at how we can create from a biodiversity perspective, and then how do we advise farmers to use right inputs, right percentage of chemicals to improve the soil fertility is a problem. Farm diversification has become very rare now because due to the excess of monocropping and things like that, we are not looking at, a lot of farmers have moved towards monocropping. So the consideration for diversified farm, such as the agroforestry and livestock, is no longer because of labor challenges and things like that. A lot of push towards regenerative farming, whether from the government perspective or from the agri value chain perspective. So we work closely with a lot of agri processing companies who have set up goals to procure sustainably produced commodities from the farmers. So these things are reality now. But again, challenges are how do we ensure that we are able to cover those transition risk for the farmers to take that first step. And then ultimately the goal of all this is to look at how do we reduce the overall emissions footprint of agriculture. There are a lot of estimates ranging from 10 to 25%. So agriculture directly contributes to emissions. And then, so how do we how do we ensure that we are able to optimize how we grow our crops, and how do we manage our animal production and forestry to be able to contribute to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So what we see is that what is the role players like us can play is a technology coupled with innovative business models. And the reason I bring in innovative business models is we have seen in our last 10 years is a lot of times we have fantastic technologies that are good for a very small pilot or a very small region. But then again, scaling up such technologies at a large scale, imagine in a scale of in India, we are talking about 120 million farmers plus farmers. So anything that we develop should be scalable across the geography. And so technology always combined with the innovative business models is very crucial to address this risks and issues more holistically. So this is just to reiterate what I said earlier from a farm diversification point of view. So the core aspect here is that we have slowly moved away from the concept of integrated farming towards excessive separation, where we are excessively focused only on one aspect of whether it is agriculture or forestry, and due to which I think we are looking at all of these as competing areas. But whereas I think there's a lot of holistic synergies that are available between each of these areas. If you take crops and livestock, the livestock manure can be a good input to the crops. So things like that are so there are both positive impacts and there are negative impacts. So in some areas there is a positive contribution, and in some areas there are negative contribution. But I think looking at all of this holistically and see how do we bring in technology, how do we enhance our business models, so we are able to leverage the best of all these different holistic integrations is a crucial part that we are looking at from an agriculture point of view. Now, if you deep dive a little bit into the carbon farming in the topic for today from a carbon neutrality point of view, so we have been looking at this space for a couple of years now. And if you look at a typical carbon farming, which is nothing but you're helping farmers to adopt sustainable farming practices. And so by doing that, you're able to sequester more carbon into the soil. And the whole notion is that when you're able to sequester more carbon into the soil, some way we are able to measure those additionality that we are putting into the soil, and we convert that into a carbon credit, and ultimately generate a new revenue stream for the farmers and for the agri value chain players that are working with the farmers. That's a simple concept of carbon farming. And we have seen that in India also, and in a lot of other geographies, it has already become a mainstream, and farmers are generating carbon credits, etc. And the price of carbon credit is still not in a range that it can incentivize more farmers to adopt regenerative or carbon farming, because it's currently trading out $20 to $25, which may not be a best use case for a farmer to convert into regenerative farming. But according to McKinsey and other reports, that it might reach about $100 per carbon credit in about a couple of years, etc. So in which case, then it may be a good potential for farmers to move towards regenerative farming and reap the benefits of carbon credits. So if you look at this value chain, typically a farmer who's working with any entity, it can be an agri-input company or a BFSI customer or an agri-processing company. So these companies provide the recommendations for adoption. So for example, to improve the carbon sequestration potential, what are different practices that the farmer needs to follow? So essentially, these players create such standard operating procedures, and they provide to the farmers, and they provide technology also to monitor and measure. So monitor the compliance of adoption of those practices and measure the amount of soil organic carbon. And ultimately, those carbon credits are certified by the verification agencies like it's the certification standards like Gold Standard or BRI, etc. And then ultimately, these certified carbon credits are traded in a public marketplace, which can be bought in by organizations which are looking to offset their carbon footprint. In some cases, these agri value chain customers itself do an insetting. So a lot of these companies would have an emissions, scope 3 emission. So in which case the carbon credits or the reduction of GHG emissions on the farmer side is accounted as an insetting within these organizations itself. So multiple business cases are possible. But if you look at the challenges in this sector, right, the first part is how do we maximize the carbon sequestration potential and then improve the crop yield of the soil, right? That's our first challenge. So in terms of how do you come up with an optimal standard of practice? Because all we have to understand that the farmers are not going to adopt a protocol just because we are saying that, right? Because the ultimately farmer will look at what is the impact of it on the crop yield, how is it going to impact his profitability, and what is the additional benefit that is going to get by following those practices. So in coming up with this standard set of carbon smart protocols, etc., is very crucial to ensure that farmers are able to adopt such protocols, and ultimately it improves the carbon sequestration potential of such adoptions. The second challenge that we see is, even if farmer adopts it, how do you measure, monitor such adoption at a global scale? For example, I'll give you a few examples when we go through. So looking at, if it is just 1 acre or a couple of acres, then it is very easy to just walk and say whether farmers have adopted a cover cropping or a crop rotation practices, or what sort of tillages have been done. But imagine you have to monitor millions of acres across multiple continents. So it's impractical to go to each farm and monitor, and because the whole business case goes for a toss. So in which case, then how do you measure, monitor compliance to such practices? And then how do you, verify the amount of carbon that has been sequestered because of adopting such practices? Again, not not doing the traditional way of doing soil sampling and doing estimation, but then how do you do it at scale? So that's the second challenge that we see in the market. And the third challenge for the demand side is, how do you trust these carbon credits, right? Because there's a lot of misconception and there's a lot of greenwashing going on in the carbon farming life cycle. So always the offsetters, the industries which are looking to offset their carbon footprint, are wary about where the carbon credits are coming from and what is the quality of such carbon credits, to ensure that they are really betting on things that which is actually contributing positively towards reduction of GHG emissions. Those are three broader challenges that we see in the value chain from an end-to-end perspective. Taking those, we have done some work with few customers, which I would like to share with you to get your perspective. For example, we work with one of the US-based food processing companies. The idea here is to help these companies monitor compliance to farming practices. So they provide set of farming practices like cover cropping, crop rotations, set of practices that the farmer needs to adopt. So, and then generate key insights that can help the companies to improve the crop yield and the overall carbon sequestration potential. So we are doing this across multiple continents. So as I said earlier, if it's just a couple of 100 acres or hectares, then it's easy to use your field force to do those monitoring. But imagine you have to monitor, let's say, 7 million acres across multiple continents. Obviously, technology is very crucial to ensure that we are able to scalably monitor such adoption of those practices, and look at how you can use this information to correlate with the yield and other aspects from a farm perspective. Now, again, there could be limitations here. I'm not saying you are able to monitor all the practices that are done by farmers, but let's say cover cropping, crop rotations, what sort of crop is in the ground. Such practices are monitored or can be monitored, and we have already demonstrated that we are able to identify the type of crop on the ground to a certain extent, and then look at whether the farmer has kept the land fallow, or has there been any cover cropping. And to some extent, we are also able to look at the tillage practices on the ground using combination of satellite imagery, etc., is possible. So that's a clear role that a technology can play in terms of giving confidence to the agri-processing companies, in terms of helping them to convert their direct sourcing farmers towards regenerative farming, and also able to get a confidence that farmers are really adopting it. So that's a sort of use case that we see from a technology perspective, which can be very handy for both the farmers and also for the agri-processing companies. If you look at banks, some of the banks have taken up a lead role in sort of setting up carbon banks. So the goal of the carbon bank is to enable the farmers to trade, the carbon credits that are getting generated to the institutional buyers who are looking to offset. So we are working with a couple of banks in terms of leveraging the satellite imagery along with the ground data to monitor compliance to sustainable farming practices, and also measure the carbon stocks at less than $2 per hectare. Because the intent is, only if you're able to bring down the verification cost of compliance and also the measurement of soil organic carbon, you can scale up the whole carbon farming as a viable business model. So the whole concept is, how can again technology play a role in terms of ensuring that the farmers are complying with the practices, and at the end of the season we are also able to measure the carbon stocks in a way that the whole business case makes sense for both the farmers and also for the institutional players which are looking to create such carbon banks for a trading perspective. So that's again a layer of area that technology can play a crucial role in terms of scaling up such initiatives. The third example that I want to give you is, again, we worked with one of the largest European fertilizer company in terms of helping them to create a carbon platform. The objective of the carbon platform is to onboard the farmers, advise the farmers on techniques to maximize the carbon sequestration, and also to measure the carbon stocks as well. So the goal of this platform is to enable the farmers to trade the carbon credits that are generated, and then through the institutional buyers. So the reason I wanted to share this view before we get into the next steps is that there is a potential. We see that while carbon credit is not the only outcome of adopting regenerative farming, but it can be a good incentive for the farmer to adopt. But there could be interim outcomes. For example, it improves adoption of the regenerative farming, improves the soil fertility, reduces the usage of fertilizers and chemicals on the operational expenses of the farmer itself. And ultimately, it also reduces the emissions footprint of the farm level as well. So essentially, if you are able to bring in these technology components that are missing currently, it can help our ecosystem to scale up the whole carbon farming as a viable business model. So we are addressing this more holistically with a couple of areas. So we saw that there was a gap in terms of reliably and scalably monitoring and measuring the carbon stock is the first aspect that is missing in the market. And then also ultimately looking at monitoring compliance to non-invasive farming. And not stopping there, we are also bringing in technology on the microbiome analytics side, where we are leveraging our expertise in the microbiome research to look at how do we maximize the carbon sequestration potential. So we look at researching into the soil profile and come up with practices and products that can maximize the carbon sequestration potential and also improve the yield. And then also look at maximizing the overall soil organic carbon and the productivity of it as well. So we are bringing the expertise of TCS both on the digital food side of things and also on the microbiome side of things to create an end-to-end solution for our customers in creating scalable business models and scalable analytical models to see how by changing various practices, the whole soil health can be improved and the SOC can be maximized, and then moving towards measuring and monitoring such practices so that the carbon farming can be made viable. So the goal of our approach is to create a digital twin for both the farm. Earlier, our focus was only to look at the farm, but we are now also getting into the soil side of things as well, where the intent is also create a digital twin for both the farm and the soil. So we are able to play around with various forecasting models and look at how do we come up with various scenarios that can help both the farmers and the agri value chain players to maximize and reduce their emissions footprint. So we call this Terra. This is still a very new initiative from our group. So which is the focus of Terra is to look at large-scale crop monitoring, improve the underwriting and compliance monitoring from a bank perspective, because climate risk is the biggest challenge for the banks. So how do we provide various tools and solutions for our banking customers to improve the green financing? Green financing means helping providing the funding and the insurance products for the farmers to move towards regenerative farming, and then ensuring that we are able to monitor such things. How do we prevent climate risk variability in terms of predicting where the risks could be, and then advising customers and farmers to take mitigative actions, etc., are some of the things that you're focusing on. See, ultimately, tying back to what we saw in the initial slide, the aim of Terra is to improve the cross-sector integration wherever possible, and then converging the innovative use of technologies to achieve the sustainability holistically is what we look at from an end-to-end perspective. So this picture summarizes how do we do this? What is the technology backbone behind this? So we call it as sky and earth convergence approach. The concept is, if you put it simply, the objective is to maximize the usage of freely available data sets such as satellite data, weather data, etc., and if possible, combine it with any sort of drone level data sets, and then direct the earth level capabilities like IoT, crop analytics, and the soil microbiome profile analytics, etc., to create a view of what's happening on the farm, and use this data sets to provide various insights about the soil organic carbon, the soil fertility, and various other parameters to our customers through a command center approach, wherein these insights can also help our customers to improve the carbon sequestration potential, improve compliance towards sustainability, and also adopt the carbon farming as a viable business model. So again, the whole concept is technology can play a crucial role in terms of enabling such activities on the ground and reduce the emissions footprint at a holistic level. So I think we are coming to the end of the presentation. So some of the case studies that I talked about, I wanted to kind of give a little bit detail into what we did actually. So if you look at the first first, the soil organic carbon estimation. So we leverage the combination of the goal of the customer is to capture 1 gigaton of carbon dioxide equivalents in partnership with about 50,000 farmers in multiple geographies, and create carbon farming as a bank, as a trading platform for the farmers, where farmers, if the farmers are part of the network, and if they're adopting such practices, they can generate the carbon credits, they can trade it through the offset providers. But the challenge that the customer had was, how do you monitor and measure the carbon stocks in a scalable way? Because the cost of measurement was very high, that it didn't make sense for the farmers to participate in such event initiatives. So we worked on about 10,000 hectares of land in certain areas in US for our specific crops, and we were able to achieve an initial accuracy of about 80 to 85%. The reason we say is 80 to 85% is itself is a good enough, because remember, we are replacing the ground-based measurements with completely satellite-based measurements. So it will eventually, the accuracy will go up to about 90-95%. But we saw that the initial accuracy levels was very good enough to at least start the next level of discussions. And we were able to successfully reduce the cost of estimation to less than $2 per hectare, which was the crucial aim of this whole engagement with our customer. Again, such principle can also be applied to any customer who are looking to measure the carbon stocks. Again, they can leverage these technology components to monitor and measure the carbon stocks at a plot level and generate carbon credits. The second example of picking up, the reason I picked up this to show you an example of the banks are also going through a tremendous pressure, right? Because of climate risk, their assets are at risk. I mean, suppose they are providing a loan to a farmer, they do not know what sort of calamity can impact the farmer, and so what would be the impact on the loan portfolio, right? So they need a fair bit of assessment of what are the risks involved in providing a loan to a farmer, so that they can better underwrite, they can better understand the risk, and then understand what what sort of products can be positioned to the farmer. So that's where we work with one of the largest banks to look at various farms and look at what sort of climate risk is there on those farms, and look at what were the historical and current performance of the farms, whether the farmer did any sort of activities, did he provide any sort of regenerative farming practices. And so we are able to use this information to assess what is the credit worthiness of the farmer. Do we need to suppose that in that region, the average credit for a particular acre is, let's say, 10,000 euros. But if the farmer has been exceptionally doing well and there are lower climate risks, then the banks can take a little bit risk in providing, let's say, a competitive loan interest rates, or they can increase the credit assessment, credit worthiness of those farmers, let's say, to 12,000 euros, and so the farmer can be really benefit out of the activities that is going on ground. So there are multiple use cases that are possible. So the idea here is that, again, technology can play a crucial role in bridging this information gap between what the bank needs and what is actually happening on the farm. So we are able to create a win-win situation, but both the farmer and also for the bank who are looking to fund such initiatives, but due to the lack of data, they are really struggling to create such business models. We also did a very large-scale, interesting work in India. We worked with about 100 plus farmers in paddy, because we picked up paddy because paddy is one of the largest emitters of greenhouse gas emissions for various reasons, because of the way they are doing the crops, because of the flooded conditions, and also the over usage of fertilizers and chemicals. So traditionally, paddy has been is contributing to about 5 to 6% of the overall emissions within the agriculture portfolio. So you can imagine that any work or any initiatives that can happen within the rice ecosystems can have a tremendous impact on the emissions footprint of agriculture in India. So the goal of our pilot was to look at two things. One is how do we enhance the carbon sequestration potential? And so what sort of protocols can improve the carbon sequestration ratio and reduce emissions footprint in the rice farming was the first objective. The second objective was to look at estimate the amount of emissions and the sequestration. So, can we, instead of doing regular soil-based testing, can we really calculate the emissions footprint and the sequestration levels at the farm level, so that we can really scale up at a regional level, at a state level, in generating such insights for our customers. That was the objective that we started with. So we selected about 100 farmers in a couple of districts in Tamil Nadu, and we categorize them into two groups. So we call them as Carbon Smart Protocol 1 and Carbon Smart Protocol 2. So the idea was that there were variations between these two protocols. One of the protocol was a regular traditional protocol. The other one was Carbon Smart Protocols. So the hypothesis that we wanted to test is, by adopting the Carbon Smart Protocol, the farmers can really save money, and also they can sequester more carbon and reduce the emissions footprint, was a hypothesis that we wanted to validate. The results were very interesting because ultimately we also brought in a parameter about adoption index, because all said and done, even if we say that the carbon smart crop protocol can reduce the emissions footprint, but the adoption of those were dependent on multiple factors. For example, what is the cost of adopting such protocol? Are there any increased input cost? And then it also influenced by the fellow farmers in the nearby, in terms of what they are adopting and what is available in the market. So a lot of such parameters had to be considered. So we also created a view of the adoption index of the farmers based on their behaviors. And we studied that during the by adopting the carbon smart protocols, the farmers who adopted it were able to reduce their emissions footprint, and especially during the vegetative stage of the rice, the methane emissions were significantly reduced. So the summary on the whole exercise that we did was the adoption of the protocol increased the rice yield by about 23%, because the farmers used organic fertilizers instead of the chemical-based ones, and they adopted a lot of other practices which contributed to improve the soil fertility. And then it also increased the farmer income because they were able to sell it at a premium rate as well. And then the seasonal flux of the emissions decreased by 33% that we observed in these limited pilots that we've done. Obviously, when you scale it up and do such pilots across multiple regions, these numbers can vary. But the idea here to show that we are able to see a direct correlation of adoption of such practices and the reduction of emissions and the yield aspects as well. And ultimately, we were able to also use the combination of sky and earth convergence technologies to measure the carbon protocol, the carbon, organic soil carbon, and then compare it. We also compare it against the traditional testing methods, where we took the soil samples, we gave it to the soil testing labs, we looked at the carbon profile of those, and then compared it with what we came up with. And we were able to see that the correlation was about 80 to 85% as well. So that's an interesting work. Again, the objective of showing all these use cases to show that, how technology can play a crucial role in terms of bridging this information gap between the agri value chain players and the farmers, and look at scaling up such initiatives across a large region and contribute positively towards reducing the emissions footprint. Thank you so much for listening. I hope I was able to kind of show a view of how technology can play a crucial role. So happy to take if there are any questions or any feedback.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for such a wonderful session on role of IT in carbon neutrality. We have also got a good idea on carbon farming value chain and many more concepts related to carbon farming, which we can use in our research also, and which will help our faculty and students to go ahead with it. I hope all participant has got nice understanding on it. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Padma, 1 minute.
Yeah.
Raveen Kumar, we are thankful to you, though the thanks has already been conveyed through Dr. Padma. But I just haven't, I just want to understand, can we ask you questions, sir?
Sure. Please, that's the idea, right?
Yeah. So, obviously, TCS being a very huge company, and we being acquainted to the work of TCS through Sanjay Kimbhavne sir, Dinesh Kumar sir, they are the people who frequently come down to our institution and have deliberations with us of how IT is being used in various sectors, of which agriculture is the one which TCS is doing quite a lot of work. So, the agricultural domain specifically behaving as a source and a sink of carbon, both the ways. The current situation being a very frightening situation for people as to what's happening around us, the erratic changes in the climate. But whatever work is being currently done, specifically in the case of our own country, how much positivity is there from the agriculture point of view that farmers are really picking on?
I think we are at an early stage, ma'am, to be honest with you, right? I mean, because the focus of climate change has just started recently, and I think we are talking to are taking an active role. For example, we are discussing with the government of Tamil Nadu, government of Odisha. So the governments are taking it seriously in terms of looking at from an SDG perspective, right? What are the compliance? How much of my landscape is in compliance towards regenerative farming? So there is a lot of push from the government, because ultimately governments are allocating. For example, the government of India, Tamil Nadu, has allocated a huge amount of government fund to focus on certain activities which can improve the soil carbon sequestration and things like that. So there is a focus from the government, and which we see it a lot in the recent months. And then from an agri value chain, because the value chain players have a pivotal role to play, right? Because for technology players like us, it's very difficult. We don't work directly with the farmers at scale, right? I mean, we work with farmers for our piloting activities from a research point of view. But if you have to take these technologies to the ground level, we are obviously working with our agri value chain customers, like agri input companies, agri processing companies. And we see that a lot of these companies are also taking an active role in terms of how they can use these technologies to advise farmers on optimizing the usage of chemicals, improving the water footprint, etc. Is something that is now picking up. And I think maybe in a couple of years, once these technologies start providing the desired outcomes in terms of because the soil fertility is not something that you can observe in a week's time, right? It takes time, because we have been practicing excessive usage of chemicals for a very long period of time. So if you have to revert such situation, it's going to take its own sweet time. But I think there is an interest from the agri value chain perspective to leverage technologies to put it on the ground. And that's where we are collaborating with our customers to say that, hey, we have got technology, and this technology is also scalable, and it is very cost effective. Because a lot of times the hesitation is, what does it mean to my ROI, right? I mean, every customer has got their own business. They need a business case to put these technologies, right? While climate risk and emissions is one area, if an agri input company have to put such a technology on the ground, then what does it mean for them from a business ROI perspective? So they are slowly understanding that a low cost technologies and a scalable ones can really help them to put those technologies on the ground and adopt the farmers. So the adoption is coming. Maybe in a couple of years, there are a lot of innovative startups are also coming in India in terms of soil organic carbons, and there are a few startups which have already generated carbon credits. So the momentum is there, but maybe the carbon credit as a viable business model, it will take few more years, because we are still not there. But the leveraging of technology to improve the regenerative farming or improve the soil fertility, that's already happening now, and there are a lot of good discussions with our customers happening already.
Okay, there's one more thing that I would just want to understand. Like you very rightly said that we are trying to efforts are being made. That's one thing. But like what has been forecasted is like 2030 is the target you are given for people all across the globe, all the nations across the globe. That by 2030 we should be able to at least control the level of carbon emissions. Like wherever we are at present, the warming that has happened at present, we should be at least maintaining that and not crossing that, because once that gets crossed, it's going to become an irreversible process. What would be the role of a college, like people like academicians like us? How could we we can be doing in this?
So I think very interesting question, because I think if you look at the whole carbon farming value chain, I covered it in one slide, but if you actually break down, it is very significantly different for each commodity or each value chain, right? So if you take a livestock as an area, forestry as an area, you have to look at ocean as an area. Governments are looking at blue carbon sequestration, ocean carbon sequestration, looking at seagrass and seaweeds as an opportunity for carbon sequestration. There's a lot of subjects and in-depth research that is happening in each of these areas. So whether it is agriculture, and within agriculture, for each crop, for example, we are looking at how intercropping in a coconut farm can improve emissions. So there's a lot of interesting research that is happening in. So the institutions like yourself can pick up an area of research in any of these topics, right? And contribute, work with technology players like us in terms of feeding those institutional knowledge and research where we can start scaling up with our customers. And there's a lot of areas to look at. I mean, because all said and done, these practices are agroclimatic dependent. They are dependent on soil. There's a lot of nuances that are coming in. While we say that we have expertise and we can apply it to global, but actually it needs to be contextualized to every agroclimatic zone, every crop, and the season and things like that. So that's where I think these the colleges can play an active role in picking up any topics and come up with models and come up with areas that from where we can pick up as a thread and start our models and scalability from that point onwards is an area. And we are actively collaborating with a lot of agriculture research institutes and institutes yourself, like how technology modeling can be done, what models can be adopted, what models can be developed to address a very specific problem in terms of scaling up. So we have that in the academic interface and academic alliance programs as well. So.
Right. Thank you so much.
Ma'am, your voice is not audible clearly, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, your voice is not clearly audible. It is breaking. Ma'am, your voice is not audible. There is some network issue.
I said thanks a lot.
Ma'am,
Dr. Parma, you can continue.
Yes, ma'am. I will do that. Your voice is breaking. Thank you, sir. I will ask the participant if the participant
Is it audible now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Now it is clearly audible.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I request the faculty member, if there is any question from student, please put it in the chat box. I request the faculty members or any faculties having have any questions they can ask to sir.
Sure, I would be happy to also guide or answer if there are any questions offline that you wanted to. You have my email ID, so you can always share. Happy to collaborate or mentor. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Sure, sir. We will do that. In future, we are looking for many more sessions on this. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for wonderful session.